Is this the guy who helped my niece? Jason was just a regular mechanic, hard-working, quiet, and never looking for attention. The night before, he had pulled over to help a stranger whose car had broken down. It was something he'd done without thinking twice. But today was different. He had no idea that a simple act of kindness would flip his entire life upside down. Hey everyone, welcome back to Tales Unveiled. Grab a coffee, sit back, and let me tell you a story that starts with a flat tire and ends with life completely transformed. Jason Smith wasn't the kind of guy who liked the spotlight. He preferred the steady rhythm of engines and the familiar smell of motor oil. Ever since he was a kid, Jason had been obsessed with cars. While most kids were building Lego castles, he was dismantling toy trucks just to see how they worked. His parents noticed early on that he had something special, and they never stopped encouraging his passion. Though his ultimate dream had always been to own his own garage, Jason was content for now. He worked at Ree's Auto Shop, a popular local repair place known for doing top-notch work. And among all the skilled hands there, Jason was a standout. There wasn't a car he couldn't bring back to life. Whether it was a vintage Mustang or a modern SUV with electrical gremlins, Jason could fix it. And word had gotten around. Customers would come in and specifically ask for Jay. It was a normal Wednesday evening. Jason had wrapped up a full day of repairs and was driving home just as the sun dipped below the horizon. Around 7 p.m., he spotted a car pulled over on the shoulder of the road. Standing next to it was a young woman, clearly frustrated, poking at her car's engine with zero clue what to do next. She was dressed up, fancy, even, and looked like she was headed somewhere important. Jason hesitated for a second. He was tired, and every bone in his body ached from a long day of work. But something about her expression, the mix of stress and helplessness, made him pull over. He stepped out and walked toward her. "Looks like you could use some help," he said with a friendly smile. The woman looked up, clearly relieved. "Yes, please. I don't know what happened. It was running fine when I left the house." "Let me take a look," Jason offered, already walking toward the hood. "You know about cars?" she asked, skeptically but hopeful. Jason chuckled. "I do. I work just a few streets from here at Ree's Auto Shop." Her eyes lit up. "Well, the stars must be on my side today," she said with a laugh. "I'm Emily, by the way." "Jason, but my friends call me Jay." Emily smiled back. "Well, Jay, how long do you think this might take? It's my uncle's birthday tonight. I'm his favorite niece, his only niece actually, and I promise I'd be there before the party starts at 8. Jason peered into the engine. "It's just past 7 o'clock, right? Don't worry. You'll be there before the first candle is lit." Relieved, Emily excused herself to take a phone call. It was her uncle checking in. Jason walked briskly to his trunk, grabbed his well-worn toolbox, and got to work. When she returned a few minutes later, Jason was already screwing the last bolt back in place. "Tell him not to worry," Jason said. "Go ahead and turn the key." Emily slid into the driver's seat and gave it a go. The engine started right up, purring like it hadn't just stalled out on the side of the road. Her eyes widened. "You fixed it. Told you it wouldn't take long." "Jason, thank you. Seriously, I don't know what I would have done. How much do I owe you?" Jason shook his head. "Nothing at all. It was a quick fix, and I'm just glad you're okay." Emily frowned playfully. "Come on. I've clearly taken you away from your evening. At least let me pay you something." "It's really fine," Jason insisted. "If we keep talking, you might actually be late." Emily smiled. Okay. But at least give me a business card or something. I might need a good mechanic in the future." Jason reached into his wallet and pulled out a card, not his, but the shop's. "You can reach me through the shop," he said, handing it over. "I'll definitely drop by sometime." Jason stood back and watched her drive off, just to be sure everything ran smoothly. Once she disappeared down the road, he finally turned toward his car and headed home. That night, over dinner, Jason told his wife and daughter about the random woman he'd helped. They both smiled proudly and praised him for being so kind, even after a tiring day. Later, just before drifting off to sleep, Jason thought about Emily again. Had she made it to the party on time? Was her uncle surprised? He smiled at the thought then let sleep take him. The next morning at the shop, Jason was elbows deep under the hood of a sedan when his phone buzzed. It was a number he didn't recognize. "Hello." Jason answered, slightly distracted. "Is this Jason Smith?" a deep, steady voice asked. "Yes, who's this?" "This is Mark Anderson. Or just Mark, if you prefer. I'm calling to thank you for helping my niece yesterday." The moment Jason heard niece, it all clicked. "Oh, Emily's uncle?" "That's right. She wouldn't stop talking about you last night. Said you saved her from missing the party. She's very dear to me." Jason smiled. "I was just doing what anyone would." "Not anyone, Jason. Most people would have kept driving. You didn't. Well, I'm glad I could help." "I'd like to do something to thank you," Mark said. "What are you doing later this evening?" "Oh, no, that's not necessary. Really, I insist. We live in a selfish world, Jason, and your act stood out. Meet me at the Anderson estate at 7 p.m. My assistant will send the details. I'm looking forward to it." Before Jason could even protest again, the call ended. Mark Anderson. Even saying the name felt surreal. Jason stood frozen for a moment, his mind racing. Everyone in town knew the name. Mark Anderson was the city's wealthiest businessman, known for his philanthropy and headline-making business ventures. And that was a man Jason had just spoken to. The rest of the day felt like a blur. Jason tried to focus on work, tightening bolts, checking fluids, running diagnostics, but his thoughts kept drifting back to that phone call. Mark Anderson. The Mark Anderson. What could he possibly want with a regular mechanic like Jason? When his shift wrapped up around 6 p.m., Jason clocked out and headed home. He showered, threw on a clean button-down shirt, one of the few in his closet that didn't have grease stains, and told his wife about the strange invitation. Her eyes widened when she heard who it was. "Mark Anderson?" she said. "The Mark Anderson? What does he want?" "I have no idea," Jason admitted. "He just said he wanted to thank me." "Well," she said, straightening his collar with a smile, "then go be thanked properly, and try not to be awkward." Jason chuckled nervously. No promises. At exactly 6:55 p.m., he pulled up to the Anderson estate. Calling it a house would have been an insult. It was a mansion. No, a castle, with towering columns, manicured hedges, and a gate that probably cost more than his entire apartment building. A security guard at the gate waved him through after confirming his name. Jason parked near the front steps, trying not to feel completely out of place. Just as he was about to knock, the large oak doors opened, and there stood Mark Anderson himself. He looked just like the pictures, sharp suit, confident posture, the kind of guy who could walk into any room and instantly take charge. "Jason," Mark said, stepping forward and extending a hand. "It's great to finally meet you in person." Jason shook his hand, still trying to believe any of this was real. "The pleasure's mine, sir." "No need for sir. Just call me Mark," he said with a friendly smile. Come in, come in." They walked into a spacious living room that looked like something out of a movie. Glass walls, tasteful artwork, soft lighting. A butler offered them drinks, and Jason politely accepted a glass of water. "Thank you again for helping Emily," Mark said, sitting across from him. "She's like a daughter to me. She told me the whole story, and I just wanted to meet the man who made such an impression." Jason shrugged modestly. "Really, it was nothing. Just a quick fix." "I know humble when I see it," Mark said. "But I also know when someone goes out of their way for a stranger. So tell me, Jason, what's your story?" Jason wasn't used to talking about himself, but something about Mark made it easy. He told him about his upbringing, how he'd been obsessed with cars since he was a kid, how he worked at Ree's auto shop, and how he dreamed of owning a place of his own one day. Mark listened intently, nodding, asking questions here and there. "You clearly love what you do," he said. "Have you ever seriously thought about opening your own shop?" Jason hesitated. "I have, ever since I was little. But dreams cost money, and I've just never had enough saved to make it happen." Mark leaned forward. "How much do you think it would take? Just a ballpark." Jason shifted in his seat. "Maybe 70 to 90 grand?" That would get me a decent space, buy equipment, and cover setup costs. But I've never wanted charity. I believe in working for what you get. Mark smiled. That's the right attitude. And that's exactly why I want to invest in you. Jason blinked. What? I'm not offering a handout, Jason. I'm offering a partnership. Mark said, I see potential in you. Real potential. You've got skill, passion, and most importantly, you treat people right. That's rare. Jason sat in stunned silence. I'll give you $90,000, Mark continued. Not as a loan, as an investment. If it works out, amazing. If it doesn't, no hard feelings. I believe in people, Jason. And I believe in you. Jason was speechless. He felt like he had to say something, but the words just wouldn't come. His eyes started to water, and before he even realized what he was doing, he dropped to one knee. Thank you, he said, his voice thick with emotion. Thank you so much. Mark reached out and helped him up. Hey, no need for all that. You earned this. This isn't about charity. It's about doing something great together. Jason managed a shaky laugh. Then I guess I'll just have to build the best damn auto shop the city's ever seen. Mark raised his glass. That's the spirit. When Jason got home that night, he walked through the door in a daze. His wife looked up from the couch, concerned. Well, what happened? Jason just smiled. You're looking at the future owner of his very own shop. Her jaw dropped. You're serious? Mark's giving me the money. 90 grand. No strings attached. They both stared at each other for a moment, then burst into laughter, hugs, and happy tears. 2 days later, just like Mark promised, Jason received the funds. It was wired directly to his account with a simple note. Let's build something great. Jason called Mark immediately to say thank you again, but Mark just brushed it off. Get to work, he said. I want to see what you can do. And Jason got to work. The next few weeks were a whirlwind. Jason didn't waste a single minute. The moment the funds hit his account, he was out scouting locations, talking to suppliers, pricing equipment, and sketching layouts in a battered notebook he carried everywhere. Every time he flipped the page, it was like a new layer of his dream was coming to life. He finally found a perfect spot, an old garage on the edge of town that had been vacant for years. The bones were good. The wiring was intact. The location was visible enough to catch drive-by traffic, but quiet enough to work in peace. It was perfect. He signed the lease, rolled up his sleeves, and got to work transforming the space. With help from a few friends and a lot of elbow grease, Jason repainted walls, installed new lifts, and brought in quality tools he'd only ever dreamed of owning. The sign out front was simple, Jay's Auto Shop. Just his name. Just like he'd always imagined. The day the doors opened, Jason felt like a kid again. Nervous, excited, terrified. It wasn't fancy, but it was his. At first, business trickled in, mostly from friends, a few curious locals, and customers from Ree's Auto Shop who had heard he'd struck out on his own. But it didn't take long for word to spread. Jason's reputation followed him like a magnet. In just a couple weeks, the shop was buzzing. One customer told another, and then another, and soon Jason was seeing new faces every day. People came not just because of his skill, but because of him. The way he treated everyone with patience and honesty, the way he explained repairs without talking down, the way he always gave more than he took. The shop grew, but Jason stayed the same. He still worked with his hands, still showed up early, still stayed late when someone needed help. His wife often brought by lunch and sat with him in the small break room. They'd set up in the back. Sometimes she'd bring their daughter too, who'd sit on a pile of tires and color while Jason worked nearby. And then, one afternoon, a familiar car pulled into the shop. It was Emily. She stepped out, same smile, same energy, though this time she was in casual clothes and didn't look nearly as frazzled as the day they met. Well, Jason said, wiping his hands on a rag. Look who found me again. I told you I'd stop by, Emily replied with a grin. Need a repair or just here to check out the place? Both, she laughed. Car's been making this weird noise, but honestly, I was just curious to see the famous Jay's Auto Shop. Jason grinned. Come on in. Over the next hour, while Jason looked at her car, Emily hung out with his wife in the office. The two hit it off almost instantly. By the time Jason finished with the inspection, they were deep in conversation, laughing, swapping stories, sipping coffee like old friends. From that day on, Emily became a regular, not just as a customer, but as a friend. She'd swing by to say hi, drop off coffee, or help around the shop when things got busy. Over time, she became like part of the family. Jason's wife once joked, "You know, if Emily ever gets tired of her job, we've got a desk waiting for her here." They all laughed, but deep down they meant it. And as for Mark Anderson, he and Jason didn't just stop talking after the money changed hands. Every now and then they'd meet up for lunch, or Mark would drop by the shop in one of his vintage cars, just to see if he could impress me again. They'd talk about business, about life, about how strange it was that one simple act on the side of the road had created all this. Jason always made time for those visits. It wasn't every day that a billionaire called you a friend. But to Jason, it wasn't about the money. Mark had given him something far more valuable: belief. Someone had seen his potential and chosen to invest in it. No strings attached. 2 months after opening, Jay's auto shop was thriving. There were wait lists for certain services. Jason had hired 2 part-time helpers. He was even looking at adding another lift to keep up with the demand. One Friday evening, Jason closed the shop a little early. He flipped the open sign to close, wiped down his tools, and turned off the lights. The sun was setting, casting a soft glow across the shop floor. As he stood there in the quiet, he let out a long breath. He had done it. What had once been a passing dream was now real. And not just real, successful. All because he'd stopped to help someone on the side of the road. It was strange to think about. Jason hadn't expected anything from Emily that night. He hadn't even known her name until halfway through the conversation. But something in him had just said, pull over, help her. And now here he was, living a life that once seemed impossible. Jason stood in the middle of his shop that quiet evening, looking around at everything he'd built. The walls, the tools, the polished floor, even the faint scent of rubber and oil in the air. It was all his. Every bolt, every socket wrench, every satisfied customer. It was a chapter in a story that had started with a simple "Are you okay?" on the side of the road, and the story was still unfolding. The next morning, as he unlocked the doors and flipped the sign to open, a thought crossed his mind. What if I had just driven past her that day? What if I had been too tired or too distracted? Life, he realized, was made up of moments. You never know which one will change everything. Later that day, around noon, Jason's wife stopped by with lunch, as she often did. Emily was there too, chatting in the back office with a few customers while she waited for a quick tire check. The energy in the shop was light, friendly, like a neighborhood hub rather than just a repair shop. Jason handed his wife a sandwich, and they sat down on the little bench outside. "You ever think about how weird all this is?" he asked. His wife smiled knowingly. "Every day. But you know what? You've earned this. All of it." He looked out at the street, the cars passing by, the faded old gas station across the road. He remembered being a teenager, standing right there, dreaming of one day owning his own shop. That same kid would have been amazed to see what was real now. "Mark hasn't stopped checking in either," Jason said between bites. "We've got a lunch plan next week." His wife raised an eyebrow. "Business lunch or friend lunch?" "Bit of both, I think," Jason said with a grin. He's been tossing around the idea of partnering on a mobile repair unit. You know, take the shop to the people. "Wow. From flat tire to fleet operations," she joked. Jason laughed. But he didn't rule it out. His world was expanding, and he was learning to let it. But he never let it go to his head. He still answered every phone call with a cheerful "Jay's Auto. How can I help you?" Still gave discount to seniors and free oil checks for single moms. That kindness wasn't a strategy. It was just who he was. And it was that same kindness that kept rippling outward. A few weeks later, something unexpected happened. Jason was working under the hood of a pickup when a young man walked into the shop, nervous, fidgeting, holding a folded-up paper in his hand. "Can I help you?" Jason asked, sliding out from under the truck. The guy nodded, then hesitated. Are you the guy who helped that woman on the side of the road? The mechanic. Jason looked confused for a second, then nodded slowly. I guess that's me. Why? The man held out the paper. It was a printed-out news article from a local blog. It was titled, "The Mechanic Who Fixed More Than Just a Car." Apparently, Emily, or maybe Mark, had shared the story, and it had started making the rounds online. I read this. The guy said, and I don't know, I've been out of work for a while. I used to help my uncle with cars when I was younger. I just thought, maybe, if you needed help around here, I'd work hard. I promise. Jason looked at him, his clothes worn, his shoes dusty, his eyes a mix of fear and hope. Come in tomorrow, Jason said after a beat. Let's see what you've got. And just like that, the cycle continued. One act of kindness had started a ripple that kept spreading, helping strangers, creating jobs, bringing people together. A month later, Mark visited the shop again, this time in a classic red convertible he'd recently restored. He parked out front, stepped out, and gave Jason a grin. This the empire I helped launch? Jason laughed. One garage, a rusty coffee machine, and a waitlist 3 weeks long. Yeah, it's growing. They sat down in the back office, sipping coffee that was, indeed, terrible. I meant what I said the day we met, Mark told him. I invest in people, and you made every cent count. Jason nodded. I've been thinking about that, about what it means to give someone a chance, about how rare that is. Mark set down his cup. That's why I'm here. I've got an idea. You up for something a little bigger? Jason leaned in, curious. I want to create a program, Mark said. Something we build together. A way to find more people like you. Mechanics, carpenters, electricians, honest workers who just need a break. We help fund their start, just like I did for you. Jason stared, stunned. You want me to help run that? I want you to help shape it. Mentor. Train. Be the face of it. You're living proof that it works. Jason sat back, heart pounding. You sure I'm the right guy? I've never been more sure of anything. It was a moment Jason would never forget, not just because of the opportunity, but because of what it meant. His story, his kindness, his hard work. It was now a blueprint for others. He wasn't just fixing cars anymore. He was helping fix lives. The following weeks flew by faster than Jason could keep up with. Plans were set in motion. Meetings were held. Paperwork was signed. The new program, tentatively called Hands on Hope, would do exactly what Mark envisioned. Provide startup funds, training, and mentorship to skilled tradespeople who just needed a push. Jason's story was the proof of concept. Now, they were building a whole movement around it. Jason spent time outside of his shop speaking to applicants, reviewing their ideas, touring potential sites. He still got his hands greasy every day, but now he was also meeting with city officials, business owners, and even high school counselors looking to refer talented students. He was, in every way, becoming a leader, but through it all, Jason stayed grounded. He never stopped being the same guy who pulled over that day to help a stranger. In fact, the more things changed, the more determined he became to protect that core part of himself. He still fixed cars himself. He still wiped down every tool before closing time. He still kept a photo on his desk. One of him and Emily standing in front of the garage the day it opened, both smiling like kids at a birthday party. And speaking of Emily, she never stopped being a part of Jason's life. Her visits to the shop became more frequent, her chats with Jason's wife longer and more heartfelt. Over time, it felt less like she was just stopping by, and more like she belonged there. One evening, after a long day of training new hires, Jason, his wife, and Emily sat on folding chairs outside the shop, watching the sky turn from blue to gold. I still can't believe it all started with a broken-down car, Emily said, sipping her soda. Jason chuckled. And a stubborn guy who refused to take money. Seriously, though, she said, turning to him, you changed my life that day, too. Not just because you helped me, but because you reminded me there are still good people in the world. Jason smiled, but didn't say anything. He didn't need to. Sometimes Silence says the most. Months passed. Jay's auto shop became more than a place to fix engines. It became a symbol, a landmark. Local news outlets ran stories about it. People drove from neighboring cities just to get work done by the mechanic who helped a stranger and got a miracle in return. But Jason never called it a miracle. He called it a moment. One moment where he chose kindness over convenience. And that moment kept giving back. Hands on Hope launched officially with 3 participants. 1 mechanic, 1 carpenter, and 1 welder. Each of them came from different backgrounds. Each had faced struggles, financial hardship, job loss, personal setbacks. But they had one thing in common. They wanted to work. They wanted a shot. Jason met with each of them personally, walked them through the process, and helped them avoid the mistakes he'd made early on. He didn't talk like a CEO or a businessman. He spoke like someone who knew what it felt like to be on the outside looking in. And every time he helped them unlock a door, he felt something inside him settle, like a piece of the universe clicking into place. He had become the kind of man he once looked up to. One afternoon, a boy no older than 15 walked into Jay's auto shop. Jason was in the back, finishing a job, when the kid wandered over, nervously fidgeting with the hem of his shirt. "You Jay?" the boy asked. Jason wiped his hands and stood up. "I am. What can I do for you?" The boy held up a flyer. It was for the Hands on Hope program. "My teacher said, you might be able to help me. I want to learn." Jason looked at the boy, saw himself in that nervous face, saw the same hunger, the same curiosity, the same hope. He smiled. "Come back tomorrow after school. Bring work clothes." The boy lit up. "Really? Really?" That night, Jason sat at home, flipping through a notebook filled with scribbled plans, business ideas, program notes, workshop concepts. It was messy, overwhelming, exciting. His wife came in and sat next to him, resting her head on his shoulder. "You look like a man building something bigger than a garage," she teased. Jason looked at the notebook, then at her. "Maybe I am." And so, the story of Jason Smith, the mechanic who stopped to help a stranger, became a legend in its own right. Not because he made millions, not because he became famous, but because he proved that success doesn't always come from chasing money or ambition. Sometimes it comes from showing up, lending a hand, and choosing kindness, even when no one's watching. And in return, life will show up for you in the most unexpected, beautiful ways. Thanks for watching this story unfold here on Tales Unveiled. If this story made you feel something, hope, warmth, inspiration, let us know with a single word in the comments. And if you believe in the power of kindness, tap that like button, subscribe for more stories like this, and share this video with someone who could use a reminder that good people still exist. And hey, if you're ever on the side of the road and someone named Jason pulls over to help, you just might be standing at the beginning of your miracle.